welcome to the Qwoted interview series, where we get to the bottom of what's top of mind with the rock stars in the media landscape, from journalists to subject matter experts to PR pros. I'm your host, Lou Carlozo, the editor-in-chief of Qwoted, coming to you from the beautiful Qwoted Quonset hut in Chicago. And on today's show, someone that I am proud to call a colleague and a good friend who has some real newsworthy stuff going on, Beth Pinsker. Beth is a financial planning columnist at MarketWatch. She has been a certified financial planner since 2018, a very rare combination, by the way, for PF writers. Previously, she worked at Reuters, Fidelity, and WalletPop.com. Prior to covering personal finance, Beth was a film critic and entertainment business reporter, writing for Entertainment Weekly, the Dallas Morning News, and many other publications. Her book, My Mother's Money, A Guide to Financial Caregiving, is out in November 2025 from Crown Currency. We're here to talk about the book. We've got a great backdrop of the book there on the video. Beth, welcome to the Qwoted interview series.
Thank you, my old friend Lou.
And I'm going to see if I'm on target here. I'm trying to think of what the most done to death personal finance advice has ever been, since I've written about it as well. And I came up with, if you cut out your daily Starbucks, at the end of the year, you'll have more than $1,000 to invest.
Yeah, I always say that the best financial advice that I've come up with, that I've figured out the entire system, make more money.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. You got to show me how that works. But one of the things I do wonder, right? And there are so many people out there writing about personal finance. And in part, I think the book is the answer to this question. We'll get right to that. But this idea of how do you keep it fresh? There are so many people saying so many things. A lot of them have said the same thing over and over, sometimes simultaneously. How do you keep it fresh so that readers are engaged?
It is hard because, how many times have I written the story, the Fed changed the interest rate, and it means this to you. It goes up, it goes down, like every quarter you have to write the same story. I've been doing this for a long time now. I've written that story 100 different ways. Um, and it still happens. I still have to write more of them in my lifetime. It's the thing to remember. Somebody reminded me of this the other day when I was at a conference for financial writers. Um, you've said it 1,000 times, but the reader hasn't read it 1,000 times. People come to your work at new entry points all the time, and you have to respect that and meet them where they are, as the saying goes, which I don't like that saying, but you really do. Everybody who reads your stuff comes at it with their own perspective, and they want you to treat them seriously and treat their questions seriously. And so if you get in this game to write about this topic, that's what the game is, and you have to be on board for that. If you want to write new stuff all the time, I don't know what subject matter doesn't repeat itself, because history certainly does.
Absolutely. And I've got to say that that resonates with me, because in the writing I've done, every time interest rates go up or the mortgage rate goes up, an editor will want that story, and they say pretty much the same thing, and it's always on point. Look, it may not be new to you, but to the reader, this is a current situation, and they are concerned about how to handle it. The best thing you can do is step into that breach and give them some solid, actionable advice.
Yeah, and at the same time, you have to understand that a reader is going to find your work 90% of the time these days through Google search, but you don't know when they're going to find it through Google search. So you have to be timely and at the same time timeless, because they could find that story tomorrow or they could find it 3 years from now. And you don't know when they're coming at it or where they're coming at it. And so you have to make it both fit the moment and tomorrow's moment.
That's absolutely true. And one of the things that I think, given that you have a lot of expertise, great writer, great editor, I learned so much working with you, that you also have this CFP designation, which I think gives you a decided advantage when covering this topic because you have something solid to lean on rather, that if it were a separate career, it would be 1,000% valid. And yet you're bringing that to the work of writing about personal finance and money. How has that helped you, or how do you think that gives you an advantage?
I think the main advantage is that I understand what my sources are saying. I ask them questions and I understand the answers in a way that allows me to then translate some of that technical gobbledygook and jargon for regular people so that they understand it. Dollars and cents sounds easy. And the math isn't really complicated math, but the concepts are kind of hard and there's a lot of nuance involved. And if you don't understand all of that, you can end up giving a piece of analysis in a piece that um, it isn't up to snuff, isn't right. And I read a lot of stuff that's like that. Um, and I give it, I try to help people. I answer reader questions. I do a lot of personal service journalism where I'm really trying to give people actionable things that they can do. And if I don't fully understand the situation, then I'm not giving them good advice. And so I took those CFP courses, and it was 2 long years of
Oh,
coursework with a lot of math involved. And
math.
yeah, like really hard math. And I passed a very difficult test. And that gave me the fundamentals that I needed to be able to understand stuff enough to explain it to other people in a simple way. And I know that I can do that because I can explain things when my kids have questions and they can understand me.
Isn't that true? That is so much a barometer or a litmus test, if you will, of when something is relatable because kids are reporters. Why?
Yeah. And I also know when I'm boring people. Like if my answer is not just on, it has to be more than understandable because if I tell my 16-year-old, or she's 17 now, if I tell my 17-year-old the answer to a question she's asking and she turns off halfway through, she's not kind enough to be polite about that. She was like, she'll roll her eyes. She'll be like, Mom, you're really being boring, and she says it in a not nice way.
Yeah.
So, readers tend to be a lot more forgiving than your teenage children. And so I also know when I'm being really over the top boring about things.
Yeah. Now, to flip to the other side of the generations, this book, My Mother's Money, has a fascinating genesis, a true life genesis, which is what makes it really impactful. The first time I heard the story of the very beginning of the book, I got choked up. Share that with listeners and with viewers.
Yeah, so I started writing about my situation with my mom when I was a columnist. I had just started as a columnist at MarketWatch, and I got that call that everybody gets at some point in their life. My mom said, "I'm having a back surgery, and I need you to come and help me, with whatever needs to be done." And everybody gets that call and you don't know when it's coming or what's going to happen. And so I went and I'm sitting by her bedside and I have a column due and I'm in the hospital and I can't think of anything at all. Because your brain is so warped at that particular moment. But the lucky thing is I was a retirement columnist, and I said, well, I'll just write about what's going on here because this is a situation that everybody faces. And so I did. And the column really resonated with people. The first column was about a cheat sheet that my mother made for me before she went into surgery that she also had when my father was alive for her to use and for caregivers to use. It had like all the pertinent information you would want, her demographic information, her medications, her previous surgeries, her allergies, all the doctor names, all the phone numbers, all her insurance information. And people really got something out of that. And
Mhm.
so, her journey continued as she was ill. And I just kept writing about the things that we were facing. And when I started to look at what had accumulated over, a series of months, I thought, people really need this information. There's really no source for it. So this should be a book. And so, some things are better off being an email and some things can be a book. This turned out to be, a book.
Yeah. Which is incredible because it sounds that as much as there's really great advice in there, and I've gotten a chance to look at the book and can attest to that, there's also almost this documentary type feel where you didn't just look this up on chat gpt or think about it as a result of your professional expertise. You lived through it.
Yes. And you and I and everybody who does this for a living knows that stories are what people connect with. You have to tell people a story in order to get them to understand the material. And if you want them to understand something as complicated as, you know, end of life financial planning and how this all works together and the unified field theory of, estate planning, you have to tell them a story. You have to paint a picture and you have to have details and you have to have drama and that had to come from me because the only way to really know something like that is to have access to all the details. And I had access to all of my own details, obviously. And, throughout my life, I've never been afraid to sort of put everything out there. But, a lot of people are afraid to put financial details out there. But I had my mother's permission and I have my permission to talk about real numbers, which I thought would be helpful for people, and my mom thought would be helpful for people. You can't really talk about things like long-term care insurance without talking about real numbers and expect people to understand it. They have to know how the math works.
Yeah.
And to do that, they have to know what things really cost. And it can't be, it depends where you live, or it depends if you're male or female, or how old you are. Like, you need a real world situation. And very few people will allow a reporter access to those real numbers because, everybody's afraid for their, personal information and all of that. But my mother is deceased and I do this for a living, and I thought that it was worth the educational um, opportunity that that people really need to understand this stuff. And so my mom's budget is in the book. Her long-term the math that went into her long-term care is in the book. The math about how you figure out how long a parent's money is going to last is in the book. And people, I think, will benefit from seeing real information in those circumstances rather than, um, a blind example or an anonymous case study. Not that those things are bad, it's just that people connect when they know it's real.
Yeah. And people connect with story. They really do, on a level that goes beyond the information. You can have the best information in the world and you can write it in a very engaging and zippy sort of way, but to have the story that informs it, it's an entirely different dimension. So hats off to you on that. One of the
Yeah.
things I'm really curious about is that we had talked about this off camera, the idea that there were so many stumbling blocks that you came across, that you have a CFP. Geez, if I'm coming across these stumbling blocks, what are people going to do when they encounter them? What were some of the things in this journey that you encountered that could really come back to bite a person if they don't know about them or don't know how to address them?
Yeah, so some of the documentation is really strict that you need. And if you don't have certain things like a power of attorney or a healthcare proxy, you run into a brick wall. It's a hard no. And people always think they can worm their way into things, or there's a backdoor approach, or, I'll take care of that when I need to. I'll figure it out when I get to it. Some of this stuff is no. If your parent uh, is not able to sign a power of attorney and you don't have it, you got to go to court. There's no half measure there that will
Wow.
work. And the difference in the basic equation, here's your math for you. Here's your really difficult math. You can download a power of attorney for free from the internet. And if you want a customized lawyer, authorized version, you can pay, maybe $90. You go to court, it's going to cost you about 18,000 is the going rate. So like, you don't have to do really hard math to figure out which is easier and less expensive. Spend 5 minutes and download a power of attorney form for your parents, or um, wait till you need it, find out you can't get one, and pay $18,000. Simple stuff.
God, it's really incredible. I think I only learned what the concept of probate was in the last 2 years. And I'd always heard it as a word. And it's kind of a funny sounding word, but just the idea too, that if you don't have things straightened out in terms of who gets what and how affairs are addressed, you wind up in court and potentially for a very, very long time.
Yeah, so anytime you have a will or don't have a will, you have to file those papers with the court. So that's automatically like somebody dies, you got to go through the court process. If you have a proper will, you file that document, it gets processed. Whoever is named the executor assumes those duties, and things move forward. But it takes time because the court systems are notoriously backlogged. In New York and California, it's a long wait. And if you don't have those documents, you got to start from a backwards go point. Like go is here. I don't even know where my camera is. Go is here, and probate without a will is over here. It's out
Yeah.
of frame. And a trust is even faster, but a trust costs a little bit more on the front end, a couple $1,000s. But these things help you on the back end. And so, like, my mom had a trust. After she and my father had wills that named each other. I name my spouse as the benefactor of all my stuff, and my spouse names me as the benefactor. And then when my dad died, I got on my mom because I had already started this financial coursework. And I'm like, you need to go take care of some stuff because you are now a single legal adult and nobody can take over for you in an emergency or after you die. Like, you need some paperwork. And I sent her off to an estate attorney, and she spent like $4,000, and she got a full estate plan. And when the time came and she died, my brother and I were able to like seamlessly inherit her apartment and all her worldly possessions, and didn't have to wait, didn't have to have a long lag period where we had to like cover the costs of her apartment out of our pockets, and things like that, and just made everything so much easier because we were, that's not an easy time for people, right? Your mom dies, and do you want to spend time in court? Nobody wants to. No, everybody wants that time period to be as easy as possible, and it should be. And my mom cared about us and didn't want us to have to do those things and have a hard time. And so that's why I call the book Financial Caregiving instead of estate planning. Estate planning immediately turns people off. Um, and so, you have to be careful with your words if you want people to read stuff. And, I try to boil the whole process down to things you do for people you love.
Absolutely. And that is a beautiful way to look at it and recast it in a truthful light. So, if people want to get the book, how do they do that? And maybe you can give any other details in terms of whether you're going to be touring around in support of it, that sort of thing.
I am pretty simple to find. I've been out there as a journalist for 30 years. So I'm pretty much my name everywhere. BethPinsker.com is my website. All the book buying information is there. It's at all major resale retailers. It's at all major online retailers. And I'm Beth Pinsker on all social media. Easy to find. And I will be having a very small book tour. If you want to do a whole session on book tours and the ROI on book tours, it's basically wherever my little car can get me. There are a few places around the New York area, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I am from.
Mm, wow. And then the book itself, is it available for order on Amazon? Is it at bookstores? Where can we get it?
Absolutely, you can get it anywhere. It's a Penguin Random House release, and it should be available wherever you buy books, whether
Okay.
that's corporate or non-corporate.
We know how we feel about those things. Beth, thank you so much for being on the Quoted interview series today. An absolute pleasure. And want to repeat again, the name of the book is My Mother's Money, A Guide to Financial Caregiving. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you. Good to see you, Lou.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning into the Quoted interview series, everyone. Our producer in Chicago is Ken Montone, and our staff engineer is Jetin Jaycott. A big shout out to Quoted's own Kelly Jura, our UX product leader, and the co-founders of Qwoted, our own Dan Simon and Matt Neller. Remember that Qwoted is the world's top platform for bringing journalists, PRs, and subject matter experts together, not just in service of the story, but also in the spirit of community and connection. I'm Lou Carlozo, your host and Qwoted's editor-in-chief. Please tune into my financial services podcast, Bankadelic, which is found via Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. Until next time, stay true, stay tuned, and stay suddenly connected.